Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwara Gurur Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Friends, on behalf of Param Vedanta, I extend a warm welcome to all of you joining for the seventh session of Panchadashi, Chapter 1, Tattva Viveka. In our previous session, we explored verses 21 to 24, which will now be briefly revisited by Dr. Kiran, helping us reconnect with the flow of the teaching. We know that the five elements arise from Panchikaranam of the three gunas. Today, continuing the study of Avidya, the cause of Samsara, we delve into verses 25 to 28 of the first chapter, Tattva Viveka. Here, Swamy Vidyaranya introduces the five subtle elements, Akasha, Vayu, Agni, Apaha, and Prithvi, all emerging from Ishwara. Through the process of Panchikarana, these subtle elements undergo grossification, giving rise to the physical universe, including the Sthula Sharira of all living beings. Swamiji further elucidates the origin of Sukshma Sharira, which arises from the unmodified subtle elements prior to Panchikarana. Swamy Vidyaranya explains which guna is responsible for Karmendriya, Gnanendriya, and Antakarana, the subtle body being the seat of all three. To guide us through these profound verses, we are privileged to have Dr. Satyanarayana, Srimati Shyamala, Dr. Rekha Kumar, and Dr. Rupa Suresh presenting their insights and explanations. The session will be moderated by Dr. Sundar sir, who will also be conducting the quiz segment later today. Let us now begin with the recap of the verses 21 to 24. Over to Dr. Kiran.
Thank you, Shiv Kumarji. Hari Om, Gurubhyo Namaha. The important result we look for, or the phalam we look for from the entire spiritual journey, is happiness. All of us look for happiness, peace, and security. And ultimately, it boils down to happiness, because even peace and security is a component of happiness. Panchadashi, first chapter, is called Tattva Viveka, because here we learn about important concepts. This learning important concept is very important because some of the names and terms is used in colloquial and our languages. For example, in Kannada and in many our languages, Samsara means it is family. Whereas in Vedantic term, Samsara means it is a life and cycle death. So even though the names are similar, the terms are very different. So we should learn very clearly the tattvas or concepts very clearly. Now, all of us, we have learnt about Atma, Brahman, etc. What are the things, its components, how to describe it, and what is it we will learn. First is Atma as nature or Swarupa. What is Swarupa? Swarupa is intrinsic, essential. It cannot be separated from it, and without it cannot be identified. Example, like if I say sweetness, sugar, it is essential nature. Wherever there is sugar, that will be sweet. You can't have salty sugar and things like that. And similarly, wherever fire is there, heat is there. You can't have cold fire, etc. This is essential. So we have learnt, and we will study further, the essential nature or Swarupa. So Brahman has only essential nature, no gunas. Just remember this. And what is it? Sat, Chit, Ananda, or existence, consciousness, and happiness. These are the things we will learn it further. Whereas the samsara, or what we learn, other things have only gunas. That means gunas are temporary and it is extrinsic. Just like a feather or a shirt I am wearing, this is not me. This is wearing, it is change. It doesn't define me at all. But you can identify me by saying, oh, I am wearing green shirt. But this is not my essential nature. This is how easy. Like how this diamond is sparkling, but it has not got the light in itself. It is reflecting. So guna is temporary attributes. Next slide, please. So in one of the interviews, Warren Buffett was asked, what is the one important message that you want to give? So the important message he says is stay out of trouble. That means if you always work out to stay out of trouble, you will ultimately find what you want or happiness. Similarly, first thing, as I told before, we want to be happy. That is the whole spiritual quest. The basic essential thing is to stay out of unhappiness. To know that, we should define or we should know what is unhappiness or what is samsara, what is other things to stay out of it. One of my gurus, Swami Chidatmananda, says, you find few people like Shankaracharya, etc., who knows what is Atma, Brahman, etc. You can't find one person who can understand Maya. So there is not one single person who can understand or define Matma. We should learn how much is Maya or Samsara so that we should just stay out of it. That is, like if I am sick, I will know the basic aspect of it. I don't do research to in the whole bacteria, gene therapy, everything. I just learn what are the precautions I need to take. Similarly, we do it. So Maya has no swarupa, only guna. So it is only temporary things. What are the gunas it has? It has got three. That is sattvika, rajasic, and tamasic. Sattvika is that knowing capacity. Rajasic is action, and tamasika is gross ignorance. Is anything which comes out of Maya will essentially have three components. All these things. Apart, next slide, please. Apart from that, we also know another concept I'm introducing is body or sharira. This is my body. So there are three components. Gross body, that is the body which I see. It is subject to 6 modifications, that is existence, birth, essence, and changes, and ultimately decay. And upper is subtle body or sukshma sharira, but which is not seen, but which runs through this, or which is essential for gross body. How it is all of this, we will learn it, which we have discussed. And third is causal body. What is causal body? Many people have tried to understand this and have failed. Just remember, there is no sharira, there is no causal body as such. Avidya or ignorance itself is called as Karana Sharira. It is neither seen nor felt, no shape. And the essential 5 essential elements all of us know: space, water, earth, fire, etc. Next slide, please. So he described previously how this whole universe and body, etc., what we call as anatma, came into existence. The basic, as I studied, was Karana Prapancha, that is at macro level, and Karana Sharira at micro level. This we discussed as the causal body, or it is in potential form. Potential form is basically it has no form. And from there, the next is Sukshma Prapancha. Sukshma Prapancha means subtle universe which we cannot see or feel, but which runs through it. Again, as I told before, it has got sattvic component. From there it arises, that is the space, which give rise to hearing concept, and air, that is it touch, and fire, sight, water, taste, earth, etc. These are the organs of perception. That is sattvic, as I told, is the knowing capacity. So how we know the world? It is through these sense organs. But just by having these faculties does not, the whole master of this is mind. So the total sattvic component of all these elements give rise to what is called as total mind. That is antakarana or mind manifestation, which includes memory, that is manasu, buddhi, intellect, and ego. All these things is from the sukshma prapancha or sukshma sharira. The rajasic, that is the action oriented of these 5 elements, gives rise to what we learn, that is space, that is organ of speech. From and what is written in brackets are the deities or the god we tell. And next is air, that is the organ of grasping or touch. And fire, from there it is walking. You just remember that we run away from fire. The warm water, the organ of procreation or all the reproductive organs come. And from earth, that is organ of excretion comes. These are all the Rajasic component. Rajasic, as we have studied, is action oriented, and these are all the motor activities we do it. From the how it comes and what is the basis of it is total Rajasic component all combine and form what is called as 5 pranas. That is respiration, that excretion, circulation, digestion, and ejection. All these 5 which we know is from the Rajasic component. These 5 are combination of all the elements of Rajasic component give it. And for any of these subcomponents, as I told, like speech, everything to act, this prana is very essential. Similarly, how Sattvic component, mind is essential. For Rajasic component, pranas are needed. But these cannot control the pranas, always not fully. Next slide, please. So ultimately what is Stula Sharira or gross body occurs after mixture, what is called as Panchikarana. There is a story told by Egde sir, like when Pandavas were in hiding, they go for begging because they were like as a Brahmins. And once they come with Bhiksha, all the food were collected. The 50% of it used to be kept apart from for Bhima. The rest, how much is remaining? Of course, we were not very good in maths, but still 1/8, it is not 1/4. Each people, 4 of the remaining people share. That is how it is. Similarly, grossification occurs where all components are there. For example, in space, there is 50% space, 1/8, other 4 components are there. And that will give rise to ear, and sound is a faculty which we know. Similarly, air, touch, skin. Fire, form, and eyes. We see the form through eyes. And water, taste, tongue. And earth, smell, and nose. These are the gross organs or the thing which comes from the gross body. This we have learned. I just wanted to flow. That is why I explained these things. Next slide, please. And this is how it arises, and I have explained. Next slide. Yeah, and to summarize what we learned in the previous verses, the verse 1 component of Karmendriya, that is the Rajas component and action we learned, and in 22 component, that is the pranas we learned, and 23 verse was very important because introduces this what is called as linga. Linga means it is the indicator. The subtle body or the mind, etc., and organ of perception and organ of pranas are very important because that reflects the Atman, and it has got the component of sentiency and it interacts with the world and it indicates Atma. That is why this is very, very important. And in the 24, how these thing came into being, we learned the subtle body, Ishwara, looked through Sukshma Sharira is called Hiranyagarbha or macro world. In macro world, it is Hiranyagarbha. And Jiva looked through Sukshma Sharira is called as Taijasa, that is micro. Or to make it more simple, Karna Sharira, Prajna becomes Taijasa, Ishwara becomes Hiranyagarbha. That is in micro and macro level. So if you are identified with everything, it is Ishwara. That is macro level. Everything is me, is Ishwara. And if you are not identified with anything, it is Brahman. And partial identification, it is Samsari or Jiva. Thank you very much.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. Since we are almost in the middle of this text, I take this opportunity given by Timapa sir to do a quick revision of all the verses we have studied so far. 1500 odd divides into 3 sections called Panchakas. The first named as Viveka Panchaka, the second Deepa, and third Ananda Panchaka. We are now in the Pratama Panchaka, and the first chapter is a prakarana called Tattva Viveka Prakarana. We have studied, as classified by Pujya Swami Paramarthanandaji, the introduction covered over the verses 1 and 2, then Mahavakya Vichara, Jivatma Paramatma Aikya, being the third section of this prakarana in the verses 11 to 30, which deals with the cause of samsara. Further study of this text shall reveal the means of moksha in the verses 31 to 64, and the text shall conclude in the 65th verse. Introduction comprises of these two verses. The first verse is of the form of Mangalacharana. We see Swamy Vidyaranya expressing gratitude to the lotus feet of his guru Shankarananda. A characteristic thing in this verse is the graphic description of the problem that we seekers face and the guru. So if the problem each one of us face is picturized as samsara being like a crocodile, the guru is perhaps a large sea creature which can easily devour that crocodile. And these two words in red font, Janmane Ekakarmane, show that the guru's sole purpose in his life is to solve this problem of samsara of each one of us, for which he works day in and day out. So how much gratitude we need to have to our gurus. The second verse is of the form of Anubandha Chatushtaya. It shows that a adhikari is Nirmala Chetasam, a sadhana Chatushtaya Sampanna person. And Vishaya is Viveka Tattvasya, and Prayojanam is Sukha Bodhaya. And Samandha, of course, is the relation between them. The text now immediately dives into the core essence of Advaita Vedanta, being Mahavakya Vichara in the form of Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam. This key 10th verse is an important placeholder. Here we see Swamy Vidyaranya saying that each of our core nature as Atma is established as Satchit Parananda Yuktya through logic, while that of Brahman as being Satchit Ananda and the Aikyam is established as a revelation through the Vedanta, Shruti Anteshu Upadishyate. How does Swamy Vidyaranya use mere logic to show us seekers that each one of our core essence is Satchit Ananda? Let us spend a few minutes trying to understand this. First, how does Swamy Vidyaranya logically establish that we are Chit? Let us look at few key words in the third verse. Vedyaha Vaichitriyat Pritak Asti. Vedyaha are the experiences. Vaichitriyat means variety, and Pritak means distinct. So the verse says that experiences, because of the different varieties, appear distinct. Now, Swamy Vidyaranya is saying that this is a wrong conclusion. Experiences may appear distinct, but one continuous, unchanging consciousness alone appears as many experiences. How does he establish that? When we see in the second line of that key verse, Vibhaktaha means experiences which appear distinct. Na vidyate, truly speaking, they are not divided. Why? Because tat samvid aikya rupyat. Samvid refers to the continuous unchanging consciousness. These experiences are having aikyam with the samvid or consciousness. Aikyam is a very unique word in Vedanta. Aikyam indicates that consciousness is immanent as well as transcendent through the experience. It is intimate with every experience that is immanent. However, it is not affected in whatsoever manner by the experience, which is transcendent. When we reflect on this, we come to know that experience is mere nama-rupa. It doesn't have an existence of its own. Consciousness alone is. If we look at the 5-point definition of consciousness as given by Pujya Swami Paramarthanandaji, he says that consciousness is an independent entity which enlivens the body, the mind, and the experiences. Independent means satyam. There cannot be two independent entities or satyas. There is only one consciousness which is independently existent, and it is in the guise of the different experiences. There is no second entity called as an experience. It is consciousness alone. One more way to understand this is through Avachedavada, which we studied at some length in the previous text, which was Atma Bodha. In Avachedavada, we see that normally we say the content of the mind is different thoughts, different experiences. But in Avachedavada, it is pointed out that the primary content of the mind is consciousness alone. When we say Gatakara Ritti, it actually means Gatakara Chaitanyam. The consciousness which is in the mind is conditioned to appear in the form of a Gata. And that is the Gatakara Vritti or the experience. There is no second entity as experience. So consciousness alone is in the guise of different experiences. So Swamy Vidyaranya establishes this in Jagratavastha, Swapna, Shushupti, therefore in Avastatraya, and goes on to say Dinantare in the 6th verse. So therefore, in all the three avasthas, day after day, there are no experiences. It is one continuous unchanging consciousness, which alone is in the guise of different experiences. So in this way, he logically establishes that we are all of the nature of Chit. Now, it was there in the three avasthas, it is there day after the day. Now he extends in the 7th verse to say that the same unchanging continuous consciousness alone is there in the Masa, which is month, Abda, which is year, Yuga, and Kalpa. Something which is unchangingly, continuously present for such a large expanse of time. What is eternally existent must obviously have existence as its very nature. Therefore, we are not just Chit, but we are Sat also, he has established. He then borrows a rule from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, and the rule goes like this. What gives happiness, one loves. Nobody would disagree with this. What gives most happiness, one loves most. This also nobody would disagree. Now, Swamiji goes on to say that each one of us love ourselves the most. Therefore, when you apply the rule, each one of us are the source of greatest happiness in this world. Therefore, he has established that we are not just of the nature of Chit, we are Sat also, and we are Ananda also. Thus, by the 10th verse, logically, he has established to each one of our seekers that we are of the nature of Satchitananda, and Vedanta reveals that Paramatma is also of the nature of Satchitananda, and therefore there is aikyam between the two. And that is like the highest knowledge that one can have. And yet, although through simple day-to-day experiences, it can be logically established, yet we are in samsara. So he spends the greater part of the text trying to find out why, even though with reasoning we can have this knowledge, why we are in samsara. Now this 11th verse, this knowledge of Mahavakya or the Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam, there are two possibilities. Do we have total ignorance or do we have total knowledge? So Swamiji in this 11th verse establishes that we don't have total ignorance. Why? Because if there was total ignorance, I should not have loved myself most. I love myself most because I know that I am the greatest source of Ananda. So therefore, there is no total ignorance. There is partial ignorance. Is there total knowledge? That is also not true, because if there was total knowledge, I would not have Vishyaspruha. But I have Vishyaspruha. That means that I still long for fulfillment from outside. Therefore, I have partial knowledge. So therefore, his diagnosis is we have partial ignorance and partial knowledge. In this text, he has a unique way of defining partial knowledge and partial ignorance as an obstacle, pratibandha, and he defines in this 13th verse that asti bhati, that is, I have this knowledge, I can experience it, is negated, nirasya, and after negating, the opposite, that is, viruddhasya utpadanam, which is na asti, that is, Sachidananda Atma is not there. Na bhati, I cannot experience the Sachidananda Atma. Instead of that, there is adhyasa, I experience something else as reality. So this is his unique way of defining obstacle. What is the cause for this obstacle? He explains in this 14th verse, tasya hetu. the cause of this obstacle iha here is anadi avidya. Anadi avidya we have already seen. Kiran sir explained in the recap that anadi vidya, mula avidya, matter principle is the hetu for this obstacle. Now, Pujya Swami Paramarthananda says that from ignorance we have moved on to anadi avidya, and this is the cause of my problem. So why not spend good amount of time trying to understand what is this avidya? So therefore, Pujya Swami Vidyaranya spends a lot of time explaining what is this avidya. Sa in the end of this 15th sloka refers to that anadi avidya. Sa prakriti. So that avidya he is now equating to prakriti, which is the basic form of matter. We should have this background understanding that the verses now are gradually portraying the creation through 3 stages of evolution. We shall see the verses which describe Karana, Prapancha Sharira, and then we move on from Karana to Sukshma Sharira Prapancha, and then we finally move on to a third stage, which is Thula Sharira Prapancha. So in this slide, we are still in the primordial Karana Sharira Prapancha stage. Sa avidya prakriti, he is telling, that is prakriti. And he is explaining that this prakriti is trigunatmika. It has tamas, rajas, and sattva guna. Another important revelation is that this prakriti can take a reflection of Brahman. It is pratibimba samanvita. Now, we can look at prakriti having 3 broad areas. There is a sattva predominant area, another rajas predominant area, and another tamas predominant area. And Brahman is everywhere. And Brahman is bestowing his reflection in each of these areas. Now, there is a nice, interesting discussion based on the type of reflection that obtains in these 3 large areas. What is the manifestation that is going to happen? Now, let us first look at that part of Prakriti, which is predominantly Sattva. The media here is called as Maya, and the reflection of Brahman obtained is called Maya Pratibimba Chaitanyam, which is also called as Ishwara. And we have seen that this Ishwara is bright, shining, golden. He is the master of Prakriti. He doesn't have any bounds or limitations on him. He is not under the sway of Maya. So this is about the Sattva aspect of Prakriti. What happens when the reflection now obtains in the tamas areas of Prakriti? The media here is called Prakriti itself, and the reflection is called Prakriti Pratibimba Chaitanyam or Jagat. And this is in the verse 18. And since Sattva is very less, this is predominantly tamas, there is very little of brightness, or rather it is predominantly darkness, and the consciousness aspect is very less. While the earlier one, Ishwara, is described as shining, therefore he is omniscient. The Jagat, the tamas predominant part of Maya, is endowed with darkness, very little of Chit, therefore full of ignorance. So Pujya Swami Paramarthanandaji, while contrasting these 3, describes how with omniscience, samsara is not a problem for that Sattva Pradhana, which is Ishvara. And because of complete ignorance, samsara is not a problem for that part of Prakriti, which is predominantly tamas. Now we are left with one area of Prakriti, which is Rajoguna Pradhana. There also the reflection obtains. The media here is avidya, and the reflection obtained is called avidya pratibimba chaitanyam, which is also called as prajna jiva. And here we can see that unlike Ishvara and Jagat, there is problem of samsara because there is partial knowledge and partial ignorance. So this kind of concludes the stage 1 of Shrishti, where the Karana Sharira, Karana Prapancha stage is over. We now progress further in this text where Swamy Vidyaranya is gradually building up this topic from the stage 1, which was the Karana Sharira Prapancha or the Maya stage, to the Sukshma Sharira in the verses of this slide. So we see in this 19th and 20th verses that from the 5 sattvic elements, Panchajnanendriyas, which are listed in the verse 19, as well as Manas and Buddhi come about. So when we count, these are 7 components. And in the verses 21 and 22, from the 5 Rajasika elements, Pancha Karmendriyas, which are listed in the verse 21, and Panchada Prana come about. So 5 Karmendriyas and 5 Pranas, and in the previous set 7. So therefore we see that the 17 components of the Sukshma Sharira come about because of the combination of the 3 gunas with the 5 elementals or tanmatras, which are part of Maya. The 23rd shloka kind of concludes the Srishti of Sukshma Sharira Prapancha by saying that Sharira Saptadashabihi Sukshmam Tat Lingam Uchyate. And we saw Kiran sir explain why this identification or the title Linga Shariram is used only for Sukshma Sharira and not Stula Sharira, because when one dies and the Sukshma Sharira leaves, the Stula Sharira is lifeless. So it really is not an indicator of Satchitananda Atma, whereas the Sukshma Sharira is. This verse 24 is showing the gradual transition from stage 1, which is Karana Sharira Prapancha, to Sukshma Sharira Prapancha. How is that? So he says, Prajnaha Abhimanena Tejasaha Prapadyate. So we see that Prajna Jiva was the Pratibimba which was obtained in the Avidya medium. So Avidya Pratibimba Chaitanyam was called as Prajna. When that becomes associated with the Sukshma Sharira, he becomes Taijasa. Similarly, in the second line, Isaha is reference to Ishwara, who is Maya Pratibimba Chaitanyam in that Karana stage. And when that gets identified with the Sukshma Sharira Prapancha, he becomes Hiranyagarbha. Not just that, he is telling that Hiranyagarbha, which is Ishwara in the Sukshma level of creation, is Samasti, and the Prajna, which is Taijasa in the Sukshma level of Srishti, is Vyasti. Why is that so? We shall see in the verses today, and I hand over to Satyanarayana sir for that verse. Over to you, sir.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Verse 25 goes like this. Samastir isa sarvesham swatma tadatmya vedanat tad abhavat tat yanyetu kathantye vyasti sangneya. Going by the word meanings, samashti is totality. Isha here refers to the Hiranyagarbha. Sarvesham is all the individual Taijasa. Swatma tadatmya vedanat means being identified and knowing this. Tat means that. Abhavat, absence of. Tu means on the contrary. Anye means the other, that is the Jiva. Kathante is called Vyasti. Kathante means is called Vyasti, means individuality, and Sanyaya by this name. So means the verse means being identified with the totality, the Ishwara is called Samashti, while the Jiva being avoid of identity with totality is called Vyasti. Ishwara or Hiranyagarbha is Samashti and is identified with all the Sukshma Shariras. Ishwara looks upon all Sukshma Shariras as one with himself. He enjoys a universal self. Ishwara has an identity of his own self with everything that he has created. He is called total consciousness or Samashti. But with regard to all the Taijasas, they don't identify with all of them and they are bothered about their self. They are not worried about others because of the absence of this identity of consciousness with all things. At the same time, it is called as Jiva, and this is called as Vyasti or segregated individual. So identity with all things at one stroke is the nature of Ishvara, Hiranyagarbha and Virat. whereas identity with only this particular body and not with anybody else is the fate of Jiva, the individual. Next slide. Taijasas are known as individual egos. Individual egos are problematic egos. In sleep, we don't have ego and we are so nice in sleep. The moment we wake up, the original ego comes up and we face problems. Pujya Swami Paramarthananda ji gives an analogy here. The big eye is straightforward and the small eye is a crooked eye. Prakriti is dvandvatmika, means of the nature of pairs of opposite. Overcoming Prakriti is to accept the world which exists in pairs of opposite. Such a sadhana should lead to unconditional and reasonless love for everyone without a trace of bitterness. Therefore, to come out of dvandva and accepting everyone and everything without comment and without rejection is to conquer one part of Prakriti, the external. When the external Prakriti is brought under control with Raga Dvesha, causing perpetual agitations, then only one can deal with inner Prakriti, that is the mind. So, having thus explained the creation of Samasti and Vyasti, the third stage in creation will now be taken up. Hari Om.
Thank you, Satyanarayana sir. That was a comprehensive description of that verse. Very quick look at the grammar here. So the first line, Samastihi Ishaha Asti, would be the basic subject-verb construct. And of whom is Samasti Isha? That is answered by the word Sarvesham. Samasti Isha of all the beings is. And the reasoning why Ishwara, we should always refer to the meaning of Ishwara as what is defined in this text. So Ishwara is the Maya Pratibimba Chaitanyam. We have seen it is the Sattva predominant part of Prakriti where Brahman's reflection obtains. And he is called Samasti, Sarvesham. The reason given is in the fifth case, Swatma Tadatmya Vedanath. Because of Vedanath, of his awareness of Swatma Tadatmyam, oneness of his identity of his self with everything else, which is in other words the Mahavakya Vichara or Jivatma Paramatma Ikyam with which we started off. That awareness is there. Therefore, Ishvara is Samasti Sarvesham. What happens to the other part now? Other part is the Prajna Jiva, which is referred to as Anye. Now, this one is in a passive voice. Vyasti Samnyaya, by the designation of Vyasti, others, Anye, Khatayante, are spoken of. So the others here refers to the Prajna Jivas, which again by the definition in this text is the reflection that Brahman obtains in the Avidya media, Avidya Pratibimba Chaitanyam. That is referred to as Vyasti. Why? Because tadabhavat. So that awareness of oneness of the self with the self of everybody else is not there. Therefore, he is called as Vyasti. Now we move on to the next shloka, next verse, and I call upon Shyamala Madam. Madam, please present your verse.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Having explained the creation of Samasti and Vyasti in the previous verse by Dr. Satyanarayana, the next stage in creation is now taken up. The 26th verse goes like this. Tad bhogaya punarbhogya bhogaya tana janmane panchikaroti bhagavan pratyekam viyadadikam. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. So even if a jiva has got karana shariram and sukshma shariram, these two are not sufficient to experience samsara. Samsara begins only with the arrival of the sthula shariram. And that is why before the birth of sthula shariram and after the death of sthula shariram, no sukha dukha anubhava is possible. Next slide, please. The moment the body dies, no doubt the sukshma shariram continues to survive and it travels. It contains all the 17 organs, that is Jnanendriyas, Karmendriyas, Panchapranas, the mind and the intellectual faculty, and of course Karana Sharira. Atma is there. Everything is there in the spirit. Spirit means this Jiva which has left the body. And it has got Punya Papa Karma, Vasanas, but still that Jiva cannot experience any Sukham or Dukham. Next slide, please. What is important here is without a physical body, Sukha, Dukha, Anubhava is not possible. While Indriyams may exist, they can only function through Golakams. Golakams mean specific physical location in the gross body. All karmas to fructify. A body must first be created. Bhagavan gives the Jiva a body for this purpose. But body alone is not enough. Sense organs alone are not enough. If the sense objects are not there. Therefore, Sthula Sharirams and Sthula Prapancha both are required for Bhoga. Bhoga means experience. Therefore, body is called Bhoga Ayatanam and the world is called Bhogya Prapancha. Next slide, please. Bhoga Ayatanam and Bhogya Prapancha cannot be created unless there are 5 gross elements. Subtle elements can produce only the subtle body, but they can never create the gross body and the gross universe. And therefore, Bhagavan has to start his factory. And what is the first procedure? Convert the subtle elements into gross elements and thereafter convert the gross elements into gross body and the gross objects. All these are created for Jiva only, as Ishwara doesn't have self-ignorance and he does not have problems of karma or karma phala. And keeping all this in mind, Vidyaranya Swamiji says in the next slide, Tad Bhogaya, for the experience of the individual Taijasa. Tatu means Tesham Taijasanam Bhogaya. Punaha, once again, because first stage of creation is over with the creation of the subtle body. Now comes the second phase of creation and therefore he uses the word Punaha once again. Sukshma Shrishti Anantaram Stula Shrishti Arabhyate. All for what purpose? Bhogya Bhoga Ayatana Janmane. Janmane means the origination, the emergence, the evolution of what? Bhogya. Bhogya means the Bhogya Prapancha and Bhoga Ayatana means the Sthula Shariram. Both are required for interaction. The word Bhogayatanam is seen in Tattva Bodha like Sukha Dukkhadi Bhoga Ayatanam. Vidyaranya Swamiji is using the same word Ayatanam means locus residence. For their origination, what does Bhagavan do? Panchi Karoti. It means grossify. The subtle elements are grossified. The intangible elements are made tangible. The non-concrete elements are made concrete. Panchi Karoti Bhagavan. And which element he grossifies? Pratyekam. All the 5 elements. Vyadadikam, like the space, air, fire, etc. Thus begins the grossification process. Next slide, please. For example, in Vedanta Shastra, each of the 5 elements like water is associated with a subtle essence called a tanmatra. For water, the tanmatra is rasa, taste. This subtle essence cannot be perceived directly. The process of grossification transforms these unseen tanmatras into perceivable forms, making them objects of knowledge. How this grossification takes place is explained in the next verse. Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha.
Thank you, madam. That was a clear explanation of the process, the beginning of the process of Panchikarana. So we started off at the stage 1 or level 1, which is the Karana stage, where we saw the main actors was Ishwara and Prajna Jiva. And then we saw the stage 2 or level 2, which is the Sukshma stage, where in association with the Sukshma Sharira or Prapancha, Ishwara becomes Hiranyagarbha, and Prajna Jiva has become Taijasa. That's where we are. Now, as Madam said, the creation or Shristi is now further evolving, and we are now beginning to see the formation of Stula Sharira and Prapancha. And for that, the intangible elementals or tanmatras or apanchikrita mahabhutas, they have to undergo a process of panchikaranam or grossification to become tangible when they become elements or panchikrita mahabhutas. So basic form subject and verb would be that Bhagavan punaha panchikaroti. So punaha means that just going to the next stage. It doesn't mean that again he is grossifying. And then you ask the question, what is he grossifying? Kim panchikaroti? Then you get pratyekam vyat adikam. So each element starting with space is doing grossification. Then you ask a question, what is the purpose? Why is he doing grossification? Then you get the answers, tad bhoghaya. Tad here refers to the Taijasas. Madam explained why Hiranyagarbha does not require bhoga. He is all full by himself. Whereas the Taijasa, as Satyanarayana sir showed, it is a small I. And he is on the lookout at the external world for fulfillment. So tad bhogaya, for the bhoga of the Taijasas. One more reason, what is the purpose he is doing grossification? Bhogayatana janmane. Bhogayatana janmane. For the purpose of creation of bhogya. Bhogya is the sense objects, which is stula prapancha. And bhogayatana is the stula sharira. So he is doing panchikarana grossification for the sukha dukha anubhava of Taijasas who are looking for it externally. And he is doing so that the Taijasa has the Stula Sharira, without which he cannot have Sukha Dukha Anubhava. And even if he has Stula Sharira, sense objects or Stula Prapancha is needed. Without that, again, he cannot have the Sukha Dukha Anubhava. So for all this purpose, he is doing Panchikarana. Next, over to you, Rekha Madam.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. As Shamla and Dr. Sundar have already explained so well, creation is being presented by Vidyaranya to point out how avidya causes samsara. Both the Stula Sharira and Stula Prapancha are required for bhoga, but cannot be created unless there are 5 gross elements. The subtle elements can produce a subtle body, but they cannot create the gross body or the gross universe. Ishwara has to create the gross prapancha by converting the subtle prapancha. All these, as has been mentioned, are created for the Jiva alone, as Ishwara does not have any self-ignorance or problems of karma or karma phala. Ishwara creates everything for Jiva, and this is the experience of the Taijasa Jiva. Thus, for creating the objects of experience and the house for the Jiva to live in, Ishwara grossifies each of the 5 subtle elements, tanmatras, through a process called panchikarana. Next slide, please. The shloka 27 goes like this. Dvidhaya vidhaya chaikaikam chaturdha prathamam punaha swas vetarad vitiyam shairya yojanat pancha panchate. Next slide, please. So this refers to the grossification of the 5 elements by Ishvara. So grossification is conversion of the 5 pure subtle elements to the 5 gross elements, which are mixtures of specific proportions. Vidyaranya tells us how this happens. Each gross element has half of that particular element and 1/8 of the other 4 elements. So all this adds up to a whole of 100%. With Vidha, in the first stage, each subtle element is divided into halves. One half is kept aside. The other half is divided into 4 equal bits. So each bit is 1/8 of the whole. So after this, Yojanath, there is combination. So I will explain later how that happens. So when these are combined again, the subtle elements become gross. Example, the gross Akasha will have half Akasha and 1/8 each of Vayu, Jala, Prithvi and Agni. And the remaining 4 1/8 bits of Akasha are distributed to the other 4 elements, which then become the gross elements. Grossification is likened by Swami Paramarthananda to the cooking of a liquid into a solid mass by continuous heating. Next slide, please. So in this picture, we learn what the name of the gross element, how it is given. So it is based on the dominant element. For example, if you look at the first circle, it has half of Vayu and it has 1/8 of air, fire, water, and earth. And the 1/8 of Vayu are given to air, fire, water, earth, so each of these gross elements have all the 5 elements in differing proportions. And the one which is 50%, that name is given to that element. And this accounts for the diversity of objects. So all gross objects are alloys, with the names being based on the dominant portion. In contrast, as we have repeatedly heard, the subtle elements stand alone, tanmatras. Important to remember that it's only the tamasic part of the subtle elements that grossify, and tamas is used for the gross body. Rajas and sattva were used for the subtle body. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, madam. That was a very simple, easy way to understand what otherwise appears as a very complex process. So just to recollect, we are now in the final stage of the Shrishti. We have moved on from the Karana and the Sukshma, and we are now in the Stula stage. Reasoning why the Stula creation is required has also already been covered. Now, quickly looking at the grammar, there is so much packed into this verse that for the sake of keeping in this particular chandas, the subject and the main verb had to be removed, which is otherwise like a main question for a college or school answer. So we have to supply that. Bhagavan panchi karoti. Now there are some secondary verbs used. Vidhaya dvidha. So having divided into 2, what? Ekaikam. Each element having divided into 2. And vidhaya puna chaturdha pratamam. After having divided into 2, you have a pratamam and dvitiyamsha. So the pratamam is again dividing into chaturdha. So therefore, you have the pratamam, which is now divided into 4 12.5s, and you have one more dvitiya, which is still remaining as 50%. And in the final line, that dvitiya amsha, which is remaining as 50%, swasvetara refers to those 12.5s which are there of each of the other 4. Yojanat means combination. Like we saw, why the Akasha is the Dvitiya, which is lying as 50, and the other 4 Pratamam, which are divided into Chaturda, 12.5 each of different ones, are combined to create Pancha Panchate. Pancha, first one refers to the 5 sets. Second Pancha refers to the 5 components in each, of which the first component is 50 and the other 12.5. Hope that was not confusing. So with this, we move to the next verse. I invite Rupa Madam to present this verse.
Tairandasatra Bhogyabhogashrayotvavah Hiranyagarbhastulesmin Dehe Vaishvanaro Bhavet Taijasa Vishwatam Yata Evatiryang Naradayam. The English translation of the verse. This verse speaks about the gross world, that is the bhuvanam, stating that it is the abode of the enjoyable objects, the bhogya, and the experiences, the bhoga. It also establishes that Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic entity, becomes Vaishvanara, the cosmic individual, in the gross body. The next slide, we see the meaning of each word. The word Thairanda means the gross world that arises from the process of Panchikarana. Bhuvanam means the world created from the 5 elements from which we get the 14 lokas. The word Bhogya means the object of enjoyment in the world. The word Bhogashrayod Bhavaha means the place of experience. The word Hiranyagarbha means the cosmic entity, the sum total of the individual consciousness. word Stule Asmin Dehe means this gross body. The word Vaishvanarod Bhavet means the cosmic individual, cosmic experience of the gross world. Moving on to the next slide. Here, in the next slide, we see the explanation of the word Andaha, which means the cosmic egg or the Brahmanda, from which the whole of the gross creation hatches out, as it were. Three groups of items hatch out: the Bhuvanam, the Bhogya, and the Bhogashraya. So the Bhuvanam, all the 14 worlds which comprise our universe. There are 7 higher lokas or the planes of existence and the 7 lower planes of existence. The Bhogya are the objects of enjoyment. The different objects are enjoyed by different things. Through such enjoyment come the experiences of joy and sorrow. The Bhogashraya, the gross bodies through which the objects are enjoyed. The 17 components of the subtle body, each has its counterpart in the gross. In this next diagram, we clearly see the 7 upper planes of existence and the 7 lower planes of existence. Going to the next slide. The consciousness, here we see the collective consciousness from the subtle to the gross. The consciousness associated with the entire gross manifestation is named as Vaishvanara. As there is only one Hiranyagarbha, so too there is only one Vaishvanara. Both are in singular form. Hiranyagarbha becomes the Vaishvanara. Vaishvanara is not just Brahman associated with the gross creation alone. It is Brahman associated with causal, subtle, and gross creation. There is cumulative association of consciousness as we move from the gross to the subtle to the, from the causal to the subtle to the gross. In this next slide, it gives us a better understanding of this whole phenomenon. When we look at the slide, we have to look at it in 2 different levels. At the micro level, that's the Vyasti, and at the macro level, that's the Samasti level. Going to the explanation of this slide. When we look at this slide, we clearly see at the micro level, the causal, subtle, and the gross body. We have Prajna, Taijasa, and the Vishwa. And at the macro level or at the Samasti level, we have Ishwara at the causal level, Hiranyagarbha at the subtle level, and Virat at the gross level. Keeping this in mind, let us look at the explanation for the next slide. Here, the individual consciousness we see from the subtle to the gross. So, from the overall total creation, we now consider each being individually. Taijasas become Vishwas. Taijasa and Vishwatam both are in plural form. The Taijasas are subtle and cannot be distinguished from each other. The Vishwas are physical entities and can be perceived by the senses and distinguished clearly from each other. In the next slide, we finally come to a conclusion. The bodies of the Deva are sattvic and reside in the heaven. The bodies of the animals are tamasic and they reside in the lower lokas. Whereas Nara refers to the human bodies, which are mainly in between. That is, they're rajasic in nature, some amount of sattva and the tamasic gunas are also there. They live mainly on the earth. To summarize, we need to remember one important thing, that all the physical bodies are not permanent creatures. So we are in this world for a given period of time, and within us, we have the Taijasas in each of these gross bodies. And when the gross body drops, we clearly know what happens in the next step. And in the verses to come, we also learn about that. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, madam, for those detailed and colorful slides which described this verse. Now, quickly looking at the grammar here, we can look at 3 sentences, subject and verb. Bhuvana bhogya bhogashraya udbhavaha asti. We supply the verb there. So Bhuvana is referring to the world. So as Madam has shown in the pictures, it can be all the 14 lokas. The 14 lokas, Bhogya refers to sense objects or the Stula Prapancha. Bhogashraya refers to the Stula Sharira. So these are, is what the sentence says. Tatra Tairandat. From what these are there, if we ask, then we get the 5th case. Tair Andat. Anda is the primordial egg, which is the grossified subtle element, which is now the Panchikrita Mahabhutas. So those are like the primordial egg, the Anda. And Tair Andat, from that we have the Bhuvana, the 14 lokas, which is Bhogya, which is the sense objects or the Stula Prapancha, Bhogashraya, which is the Stula Shariras. So they come about. That's what it says. And now in the second and third line, we see this transition now happening to the terms we saw as a part of the Sukshma Sharira Prapancha to Stula Sharira Prapancha. So Ishwara, as a part of the Karana Sharira, Karana Prapancha, became Hiranyagarbha of the Sukshma Prapancha, and the same Ishwara now becomes Vaishvanara or Virat as the part of the Stula Prapancha. In the same manner, Prajna Jiva, who was part of the Karana Sharira, who became Taijasa as a part of the Sukshma Sharira, is now being shown to become Vishwa as the part of the Stula Sharira. So that transit is beautifully explained in this verse. So we'll now look at recollecting the study in the previous classes and today's classes. So the first question is based on the 10th verse, which we have seen today. Fill in the blanks by choosing one of either Shruti and Yukti. Swamy Vidyaranya establishes Atma as Sachidananda by
Yukti.
Yes,
Is it Yukti? Yeah.
Yes. And Param Brahma or Brahman also as Sachidananda by
Shruti.
Yes, madam. So this is the answer. We go to the second question. The key learning that Atma is of the nature of Chit. Fill in the blank by choosing one of the words consciousness or experiences. Dash appear distinct, but one continuous unchanging dash alone appears as many experiences.
Here, the experiences appear distinct, but one continuous unchanging consciousness alone appears as many experiences.
Yes, so that's how he established using logic that we are all Chit. What is the word used by Swamy Vidyaranya for consciousness?
Consciousness means it is gnanam, that is samvit. Is it samvidaika? Yeah.
Yes, samvid aikya rupyat na bidyate, vibhaktaha na bidyate. So the experiences appear distinct, but really speaking, they are not divided because there is this continuous unchanging consciousness which is equated to it, aikyam. How does Swamy Vidyaranya establish our nature as Sat? What is eternally existent must have dash as its very nature.
Existence.
Yes,
What is it?
What is eternally existent? Eternally existent is indicated by Masabda Yuga Kalpeshu.
Masabda Yuga Kalpeshu.
How does Swamy Vidyaranya establish Atma is of the nature of Ananda? What Nyaya from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad does Swamy Vidyaranya used to establish that we are all Ananda? What gives dash one loves? What gives dash one loves most?
Actually, the Nyaya means, is it that Atmanastu Kamaya Sarvam Priyam Bhavati?
Yes.
According to the
based on that, like for our understanding,
yeah.
we have made this.
What gives happiness one loves, what gives most happiness one loves it most. Atmanastha Kamaya.
So the rule or nyaya is what gives most happiness one loves most. So each one of us love ourselves the most. Therefore, each one of us are the source of the greatest ananda in this world. That establishes that our true nature is ananda also. It was chit, I mean, it is chit, it is sat, and it is ananda also. What are the names of the three parts of the Prakriti and the three Pratibimba, as we have seen in this text?
Prakriti one is Maya, Pratibimbita Chaitanya in Brahma, Ishwara, that is Maya. Prakriti one is Maya. Prakriti two is Avidya. Prakriti three itself is called Prakriti itself. Then Pratibimba name is, since it is Maya, it is Ishwaraha. Then Prakriti is Avidya, then it is called Prajna Jivaha. Prakriti is Jagat or Prapanchaha. Is it okay?
Yes, madam. So the media names are Maya, where it is Sattva dominant, Avidya, where it is Rajas dominant, and Prakriti, where it is Tamas dominant. The reflections in each one of them are Ishwara, where Sattva is dominant, Prajna Jiva, where Rajas is dominant, and Jagat, where Tamas is dominant. However, like between the lines, what one would understand is that Ishwara is also called as Nimitta Karanam, and Jagat is also called Ishwara Upadana Karanam. Therefore, in a way, there is merger of three columns into two, and that's how when we see the evolutes from Karana to Sukshma to Sthula, we are discussing about Ishwara, Hiranyagarbha, and Virat on one side, and we are discussing Prajna Jiva becoming Taijasa and Vishwa. There are no three columns there. That is because Jagat is seen as Ishwara Upadana Karanam. Sukshma Sharira arises from. So it's like a multiple choice question. We can choose multiple answers.
Tanmatras or Apanchikruta Mahabhutas, that is on elementals. And then it is from Sattva Guna. Sukshma refers to Gnana part, that is mind and Antahkarana, that it must be Sattva Guna. Sattva Guna and Apanchikruta Bhutas.
So the Sukshma Sharira also has the Karmendriyas and Panchaprana.
Oh, Rajoguna also.
Rajoguna also. And how many components are there in Sukshma Sharira?
Out of Sattva Guna, 5 Gnanendriyas, Rajoguna, Pancha Pranas and Pancha Karmendriyas. Then samashti of all this is Antahkarana, which is divided into Manas and Buddhi. Total, it is 17 components.
Yeah. So in some texts, the Antakarana is divided into 4, where there is memory and
Chitta, Ahankara and Chitta. Yeah.
Also, Chitta and Ahankara. So otherwise we see here in this text as a 17. Next question. Stula Sharira arises from? Choose from this list.
Tamoguna, Panchikruta Mahabhutas. Yeah, and Rajoguna also. Oh, no Rajoguna. Tamoguna and Panchikruta Mahabhutas. Okay.
Because for Stula Sharira, it has to be grossified. And in the grossification, Tamoguna.
Yeah.
So we now go to the questions based on the discussion of the verses presented today. So this verse is a transition in Srishti from Shukshma to Sthula stage. On what basis does Vidyaranya name Ishwara as Samasti?
It is Swa Atma Tadatmya Vedana, that he is aware of his nature. That is why Swatma Tadatmya Vedana, he calls Ishwara as Samashti.
So therefore he is omniscient and he has that identification. Why does Jiva suffer samsara?
Tad abhavat, that Swatma Tadatmya Abhavat Jivaha, he suffers the samsara.
Yeah, there is no omniscience, there is no identification of everything as one. So therefore he suffers from samsara. So Ishwara is aware of the oneness of himself with all, whereas Jiva has no such awareness. So he craves for fulfillment. Therefore, he has raga dveshas. He gets into karma, and then he becomes a bhokta, and then there is punya papa and punarjanma. Why does Bhagavan create sthula sharira and prapancha for the jiva? Give two reasons.
One is sukha, dukha, anubhava. Then karma phala, no, Jiva does not have the self-knowledge.
Yeah. So we saw in the presentation by Shamla madam that the Taijasa, which is the jiva identifying with the sukshma sharira, he doesn't have golakas, therefore he cannot have bhoga. Therefore, he creates, Ishwara creates the sthula sharira, and he has to create sthula prapancha also. Otherwise, body is there able to enjoy sukha dukha, but there is no sense object in front.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have self-knowledge. In this verse, which is a pramanam for panchikaranam, as indicated in Sanskrit, what is mathematically the percentage each tanmatra becomes when the verse says ekaikam dvidha and pratamam puna chaturdha?
Yeah, dvidha means it is 50%. Chaturdha means out of the 50%, another quarter, that is 1/8, that is 12.5%, 50% and 12.5%.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. So, in dvidha, there are two now, each of 50-50. First one is called pratamam, and the second 50 is called dvitiya. And that pratamam is again divided into chaturda. So therefore, it is 12.5. Last question, madam. What does Swamy Vidyaranya, what names does Swamy Vidyaranya give when Ishwara is identified with Sukshma Prapancha?
Sukshma Prapancha is the Hiranyagarbha.
Yes. And when that Hiranyagarbha is identified with Sthula Prapancha, what is the name?
That is Vaishwanara, Virat or Vaishwanara.
So that is on the macrocosm axis. Now in the microcosm, when Prajna is identified with Sukshma Sharira, he becomes?
Taijasaha.
Yeah. And when the Taijasa, which is endowed with Sukshma Sharira, he becomes identified with Sthula Sharira, he is called?
Vishwa. Vishwaha.
Yeah. So those are the answers. Thank you for the answers, madam.
Dhanyavada to all our revered speakers and Dr. Sundar sir. I would not be wrong if I say his luminous words, enlightening words, helped unfold the subtle truths with clarity and grace. Not to forget the wonderful quiz reinforcing the key learnings of the verses of this day. Dear seekers, the sense objects are subtler than the sense organs. Still subtler is the mind. Beyond the mind is the intellect. Beyond the intellect is Mahat. Superior to Mahat is unmanifest, and beyond even that is the Atma. Nothing is higher than Atma. It is subtle, refined vision, and a pure intellect to perceive it. The seeker must withdraw each level into the higher. Speech into mind, mind into intellect, intellect into Mahat, and Mahat into the tranquil Atma. Therefore, arise awake, approach the wise, and know the self. This path is subtle and sharp, like walking on a razor's edge. But it alone leads to freedom. To understand more and benefit from this teaching, let us gather again in Satsanga on Monday, September 22nd, at 6:30 p.m., 6:45 p.m. for the session 11 of our Mananam series. Together, we shall contemplate the sacred wisdom of Kathopanishad, chapter 1, Valli 3, mantras 10 to 14, where Yama reveals the eternal secrets of self. Friends, let us now chant Shanti Mantra and conclude the day's session. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Shri Krishna. Namaste.